Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel. If you've never been here before, never watched any of my videos, have no idea what I do, I cover true crime cases, and all of the cases that I cover are a little bit older. They're all basically 20 years or older. So if that's something that you might be interested in, maybe go below, click the subscribe button, and also make sure to turn on the post notifications to be notified every time that I upload. Since the beginning of my channel, I've been covering cases of John and Jane Does, which are unidentified individuals, and in this case, deceased individuals, often homicide victims. In the past few months, I've been covering more and more John and Jane Doe cases, and I've been getting some very positive feedback from all of you. So I wanted to dive into, yet again, another Doe case. I have a list of cases that I want to do in the future, and I went to my John and Jane Doe section of that list, and right at the top was Penny Doe, the Jane Doe that we'll be talking about today. So with all of that being said, let's get right into the case. In Monroe Township, Clarion County, Pennsylvania, on a sunny Sunday in July 1990, July 22nd to be exact, Angie Klinger, a 7-year-old girl, was filled with anticipation for the approaching Monday. Turning 8 years old on July 23rd, she could hardly contain her excitement. Despite her eagerness for the next day, Angie spent her Sunday happily playing outside with her brother and her 2 neighborhood friends. This was the very first summer of the 1990s, and as NBC News described it, in the 90s, summertime meant one thing: playing outside all day until the street lamps turned on and you headed home for dinner. Yes, Angie was able to celebrate her 8th birthday and enjoy herself, but what happened the day before is something she would never forget. Angie said that she, her 10-year-old brother, and these 2 neighborhood friends, 10 and 12 years old, were always outside, and they would walk for hours. Along the way, they would often pick berries, and this Sunday started out like any other day during the summer, and that was their plan for the day. One of the spots that this group often hung out at was a tunnel under a nearby railroad trestle. At this time in 1990, the railroad was still in operation. Today, it isn't, and the area is completely overgrown. According to Unidentified Wiki, this railroad trestle is in an extremely remote area of Monroe Township, about 3 miles south of Interstate 80 by Road 535, not too far from the neighborhood in which they all lived. This group headed toward the tunnel that day a little after noon. It was sunny, humid, and they brought a container with them to collect berries. Almost immediately when they got to the trestle, they smelled a putrid smell. Then they spotted something lying in the stream bed under the trestle. Angie told Dateline in 2022, "We noticed something at the bottom of the little tunnel. We thought at first it was like a deer carcass or something," which in this rural area of Pennsylvania, it was not and is not uncommon to come across a dead deer. This smell, though, it was a little different. Naturally inquisitive children, they felt compelled to investigate further. As they approached, it became clear that it was not a deer carcass they had stumbled upon. Gradually, they began to discern human characteristics, specifically what appeared to be a human skull. Resting in the culvert under the trestle, or the stream bed, lying face down, were the decomposed remains of a woman. At this point, they were all completely freaked out. Angie stated that she still has vivid memories to this day of what the woman looked like lying there. She remembers not seeing much flesh. The group immediately ran back to their neighborhood. Their adrenaline was pumping, and Angie said that she doesn't think she ever ran that fast in her entire life. Angie told Gavin Fish for Explore Clarion in 2022 that she was so terrified while they were running that she almost felt like someone was watching them. Angie's mother was outside of their home, and she saw the 4 kids running back as fast as they could, but they headed into the first home that they came across, which was their friend's house. The 4 children, out of breath, shaken up, and traumatized, informed the adults of what they found at the trestle. The adults phoned the authorities, and law enforcement was sent out instantly. The next thing that Angie knew, she, her brother, their 2 friends, and the parents were traveling to the culvert with law enforcement following behind. Angie and one of the friends decided to stay behind in the truck while Angie's brother and the other friend led the parents and authorities to the spot where they found the body. The kids were right. What they found wasn't the carcass of a deer, and it definitely wasn't a mannequin. It rarely is. It was, in fact, the remains of a woman. Authorities checked to see if the woman had any form of identification on her. She didn't, and for that reason, she was classified as a Jane Doe. Angie, her brother, the friends, all the parents were sent home, and authorities took it from there. An autopsy would conclude that this woman had been deceased for about 6 to 8 weeks, possibly more, and her cause of death was blunt force trauma to the right side of her skull. There are photos of this Jane Doe's skull online for educational purposes, of course, and you can tell on the right side of her skull that she has a huge crater. As many of you know, a lot of the time with Jane or John Does, they will be given a distinct name, usually something that has to do with the area they were found or something that personally relates to them. Although they didn't locate any form of identification on this woman, a white woman that they believed to be anywhere between 20 to 40 years old, they did find a penny in her right pocket and a penny in her left pocket. For that reason, she was given the name Penny Doe. When it comes to Penny Doe, she had shoulder-length, dark brunette hair, and her eye color is unknown due to extreme decomposition. She had a chipped top front right tooth, but it is unknown whether this chipping came before or during the attack that ended her life. Her teeth seem to overall be in good condition with no fillings or tooth decay present. Although many databases state that she may have been between 20 to 40 years old, it's her teeth that have made experts believe that she may have been younger than 20. We're going to get a little bit more into her age later on in this video though. Experts were also able to conclude based on her teeth that she had most likely come from an area with fluoride in its water supply. With how decayed her remains were, it was difficult to pinpoint her weight and height, but they believe in life her height had been between 4 feet 10 inches and 5 feet 6 inches, and her weight between 105 and 120 pounds. And just like her age, we're going to come back to the height and weight a little bit later on in this video as well. Her right fibula was also broken, and still to this day, they're unsure if this occurred during the attack that ended her life or possibly when her remains were being thrown into the culvert. According to the National Missing and Unidentified Persons System, or Nameless, she was found wearing size 9 black jeans, the brand was Gitano Express, size 7 Fruit of the Loom brand underwear, a black button-down shirt with an attached floral vest made by the brand Stoplight of California. She was wearing no bra, socks, footwear, or jewelry. Also, nothing else was found nearby that seemed to have been connected to her in any way. 2 days after her remains were located, there were small blurbs posted in papers around Pennsylvania. This blurb, copied and pasted into multiple papers and spread around the area, stated that a teen girl had been found deceased. So when it comes to her age at the beginning of this case and even today, there are conflicting reports and differing opinions regarding it. The initial report stated, teen girl's body found. The body of an unidentified female teenager was found Sunday in Monroe Township, Clarion County, state police said yesterday. A group of children hiking through the woods found the body about 1 p.m. near Route 2012. The time and cause of death were unknown yesterday, said a spokesman from the Allegheny County Coroner's Office. People of Pennsylvania were told that if anyone had information regarding this Jane Doe, to please contact the Pennsylvania State Police. The state police did receive calls, some more promising than others, but none seemed to get them closer to identifying her. 2 days after that, on the 26th, the Clarion News reported that authorities were making little progress in the case and again asking the public for help. In this article, Corporal Dan Fiscus stated, "We're looking for information. Anything that somebody can supply us with, any type of lead. We don't have anything right now to work with. We have the jaw and skull, and it will take time to put that all together. Positive identification may not ever be possible." Of course, he was saying this before so many of the advancements that we have had in technology up till today. Now, when it comes to some of the methods of identification that they would have had in 1990, they weren't able to collect fingerprints from the victim due to the decomposition, but they did thankfully collect DNA. For the next year, information is limited regarding her case, but it seems like they were sporadically releasing information about her, but little was coming into the department. They combed through missing persons reports from the area and surrounding areas, but none of them matched the description of this Jane Doe. Authorities believed and still believe today that she was not from the area that she was found in, but was possibly brought to that area and dumped there by a local, someone who would have known that area under the trestle. We also have to take into consideration that she was found not too far from Interstate 80, so possibly it also could have been someone traveling that main road and wanted to find a desolate area off of it to dump her. Due to the rough shape her remains were in, photos of her were not released publicly, but during spring of 1991, authorities hired reconstruction artist Michael Taster to create a clay mask of the doe. Photos of this mask were spread around the area and to other departments, but still no one seemed to know who she was. When you have a body and not much to go off of, your only option is to really delve into some theories. One thing that is done is looking into what events occurred around the time a person may have died in a specific area. What could have possibly brought a person to an area, a person not believed to be from that area? One lead investigated by authorities was that she may have attended a concert. On Sunday, May 27th of 1990, Memorial Day weekend, Music Valley Music Festival was held at a farm about 15 miles from where Penny Doe was found. It was a day-long rock music festival that included bands like The Stand, Down to the Wire, Lawyers, Guns and Money, B.E. Taylor, and Cleveland. This festival was quite popular at the time, with over 5,100 people attending that year, and it attracted people from all over Pennsylvania to Ohio to New York and beyond. There was, though, no evidence to prove that she may have attended this music festival. No ticket stub found on her, no one at the festival saying that they recognized her and saw her in attendance. This was just a theory and still a theory today. It's an ongoing theory because of how close it was to where she was found. It attracted so many people that year, and her time of death could have occurred around the time of the festival. Years would pass with very little updates in this case. This didn't mean that authorities didn't care about this case or finding out who she was or who took her life, but people weren't coming forward. If people weren't coming forward with new information and technology wasn't advancing for them to find out anything, this really left them with no choice than to focus on newer cases. Through the years, they would revisit Penny Doe's case in their spare time when they weren't focusing on a more current case, and they would hope that going over everything, they would find out something more, or maybe this time they would spread the information around and somebody would come forward that didn't come forward in 1990, but still every time they started to look back on her case and think that they were going to find out something else or get somewhere this time, it just, again, went nowhere. Todd Matthews, who has since passed away, who was one of the founders of the Doe Network, a nonprofit organization of volunteers who work with law enforcement to connect missing persons cases with John and Jane Doe cases, stated that Penny Doe's case was entered into the Doe Network in 2003. He said that a majority of the information that they had on her case that they used to enter her into the site came from newspaper articles at the time, which are no longer available online. I did try to do a little bit of digging into newspaper articles surrounding her case, and he is correct. There's very few articles available. When Dateline NBC covered this Doe's case in 2022, they asked the editor of the Clarion News, Rodney Sherman, for the newspaper's original reportings on her case. But he said, unfortunately, the archived newspapers are not currently accessible. Now back to the Doe Network. It works primarily at matching up Doe cases with missing persons cases, and there have been multiple potential matches submitted to law enforcement over the years for this Doe, but none have been a match yet. I did try to locate a list online of missing women who have been excluded as being Penny Doe, and I could not find that anywhere. When it comes to reconstructions of Penny Doe to show the public what she possibly looked like while alive, there have been a few done through the years. This includes the mask that I mentioned before, a photo by Judy Reimer, a photo by Kathleen Pacheco, 2 photos done by the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, the first being a lively colored one and the other one being a colorless one, showing how she possibly looked from multiple angles. And lastly, there was one done by Carl Koppelman. In Carl's, you are also able to see part of the style of shirt she was wearing at the time that she was found. Authorities have kept most information regarding tips private from the public, but there was one tip that they felt was worth mentioning because it had to do with a letter and they were desperate to locate the author of the letter. During the summer of 2002, so 12 years after Penny Doe was found, authorities received an anonymous letter regarding her case. What was written in this letter has never been released to the public, but law enforcement asked whoever wrote the letter to please come forward and speak with them. Unfortunately, the author of this letter has never made themselves known. Could the author of this letter have actually had firsthand information regarding this case? Maybe they knew who she was, maybe they knew who was responsible, or could it have been nothing but a prank to get people's hopes up? We still, 23 years later, have no idea. When Dateline released their article on this case back in 2022, they tried reaching out to state police in charge of her case, who claimed to still be working on it to this day, but state police decided to deny the request for an interview or even a quote. Where they are today in the investigation when it comes to the investigation itself is unknown. This case is definitely not discussed on a larger scale, especially compared to a lot of other Jane and John Doe cases. But if it has deeply affected anyone, that's been Angie Klinger. Angie told Dateline that she feels attached to the case and wants to help in any way she can. That every single year around her birthday, she thinks of the Jane Doe that they found so many years ago in the culvert. She said that it surprises her sometimes when she mentions it locally and people don't remember it because it's affected her for so long and so intensely. She said, "I just feel like little old me probably can't do anything. If it had publicity, I really think that, I don't know. I just have this gut feeling there, like that's what it needs, because people obviously have heard things. Somebody knows something." One person that I'm going to mention again that has done so much work for this case is Gavin Fish. He did a write-up for Explore Clarion where he interviewed Angie, and the two of them went to the spot where she found the remains with her brother and two friends. He decided to delve a little deeper into the case and released a follow-up article regarding his findings, and it's very interesting. He decided to reach out to Clarion County coroner Dan Shingledecker. Gavin wanted to locate Penny Doe's original autopsy report, and that was his main goal for reaching out to the coroner. Dan was super helpful and said that he has only been a county coroner since 2019, so he wasn't the county coroner in Clarion County in 1990, but he knew who was and would reach out to him and get back to Gavin about the report. Back in 1990, there wasn't a central records storage there, so whatever happened to autopsy reports is unknown. Dan said that he tried his hardest to locate her autopsy report, but he was unable to. He spoke to the person who was the county coroner in 1990, and unfortunately, that person was unable to help as well. Dan told Gavin that he could possibly try the Prothonotari's office. The Prothonotari's office is essentially the chief clerk of the civil court. It's responsible for filing, storing, and distributing all official civil records and documents. After a thorough search of the office with a staff member, Gavin couldn't locate anything on Penny Doe's case. Gavin reported back to Dan that he wasn't able to locate anything that way, and Dan told him that maybe he could try Dr. Dirkmaat. Dr. Dennis Dirkmaat is the chair of the Department of Applied Forensic Sciences at Mercyhurst University. In 1991, he did an entire report on the bones of Penny Doe. Gavin reached out to him, and Dr. Dirkmaat said that he would have a grad student of his go through some of his old things and try to locate anything that he may have on Penny Doe's case. Dr. Dirkmaat's next email to Gavin stated that they had her bones currently and were looking at them again. In Dr. Dirkmaat's original report titled Forensic Anthropological Analysis of the Monroe Township Human Remains, Clarion County, Pennsylvania, dated June 26, 1991, we learn a bit more about Penny Doe. For one, based on the development of her bones, Dr. Dirkmaat believes her age would have been between 22 to 29 at the time of her death. Most databases, though, still put her age between 20 to 40. He also was able to narrow down her height to roughly 5 feet 3 inches tall. Most databases still have her height between 4'10" to 5'6". He also believes that Penny Doe suffered no broken bones during her lifetime and that the broken leg, her right fibula, happened around the time that her life was taken. He also noted that Penny Doe's sternum, the long flat bone located in the central part of the chest, was deformed, but this may have not been noticeable while she was alive. Gavin was actually able to, with permission from Dan Shingledecker, to view Penny Doe's bones with Dr. Dirkmaat and go over all of the information at hand. About the experience, Gavin Fish wrote, Dr. Dirkmaat walked us through some of the ways he would have determined the age and stature of the skeleton, pointing out shapes and fusions in Penny's remains in a way that only a highly trained and experienced forensic anthropologist could. According to his memory, Penny's skull and jawbone were sent to Colorado to have molds made. A forensic artist then took a cast from the molds and created a clay bust of what Penny Doe may have looked like. Dr. Dirkmaat then reached into a cardboard box and produced the bust, setting it gently on the table. Now, when it comes to finally identifying Penny Doe with what we have technology-wise today, her DNA was entered into CODIS many years ago. CODIS, or the Combined DNA Index System, a national FBI database of DNA profiles used to solve crimes and identify missing people, was unable to find a match, though, for this doe. Dr. Dirkmaat sent another sample of hers to CODIS in 2012, and still during that year, there was no match. It seems that this Jane Doe is not in CODIS. Now we get into genetic genealogy, the method of identifying unidentified individuals that has been gaining a lot of popularity in the past few years, primarily as a result of Othram Inc. identifying the Golden State Killer as Joseph James D'Angelo back in the year of 2018. If you're unfamiliar with what genetic genealogy is, it's the process of extracting DNA from an unidentified individual and creating a DNA profile from that DNA. After you have successfully created a DNA profile from the DNA, you enter it into a genetic database such as GEDmatch, Ancestry, or 23andMe. The objective of this is to locate familial DNA or relatives of the person you're trying to identify. Sometimes they're able to locate close family members just by doing this, but other times they have to create an entire family tree to try to locate the closest relative. If they do find any relative still alive, they will speak to those people or that person in person and see if they have a missing loved one that matches the description of the Jane or John Doe that they're trying to identify. If the suspected close relative says, yes, I think this could be my missing loved one, then authorities will go through with conducting a DNA test. This DNA test will compare the DNA of the suspected relative to the Jane or John Doe's DNA, and they will see if there is a match there. If there is a match, then it seems like they have their answer to who the John or Jane Doe was in life. The latest article that Gavin Fish did on Penny Doe, the last paragraph of that article, he goes into how that's the next step in her case, is to go through with genetic genealogy. From there, I decided to reach out to Gavin Fish myself, so I sent over an email and he was super helpful, super kind, and willing to answer any of my questions. We chatted a little bit back and forth, and it seems like at this point, he's really eager to get the ball rolling on identifying her and going through with genetic genealogy, which is so exciting. At this point, I'm going to be keeping in contact with Gavin, and if there is a fundraiser eventually to cover the cost of going through with genetic testing for Penny Doe, I'm going to be sharing that in a future video and also on my community tab. If they do go through with a fundraiser, I will keep you all 100% updated on that for anyone who would want to donate. I know that I will also myself. I will have all of Gavin Fish's information down below in the description of this video, including his website, to the articles he released on Penny Doe's case, to the YouTube video where he speaks directly with Dr. Dirkmaat. I want to thank Gavin for speaking with me, and definitely take the time and go check out his website because he works on so many cases. But if you're interested in Penny Doe's case and this video ends and you'll want to learn a little bit more, you're itching for some more information, definitely check out Gavin Fish's YouTube video for Explore Clarion where he talks with Dr. Dirkmaat. It is so fascinating. If you have any information though regarding Penny Doe's identity or the identity of her killer, you are urged to contact the Pennsylvania State Police Troop C Clarion Criminal Investigations Unit at 814-226-1710. I want to thank you all for taking a little bit of time out of your day to hear about Penny Doe's case. Like every single case that I cover on my channel, it's one that I've been thinking of consistently since I started researching into it. One of the things with Jane and John Doe cases, and I don't know if anyone else feels this way, but it's something I do personally because before I go to bed, I always think about the cases that I'm currently working on and researching. And I sit there with Jane and John Doe cases and I think of all the thousands of names out there. some more popular than others, some more unique, and I wonder what their name is. Obviously, in life, they had a name, and I just wonder what that name is. Were they an Amanda or John or Frankie or Ashley, or what was their nickname? What was their parents' name? What was their relationship like with their parents? What was their favorite hobby? What were the things that made them embarrassed in their life? What about them made them them? I hope that with Penny Doe, we will eventually have some of the answers to those questions. If there are any other cases that you possibly want me to cover here on my channel, make sure to send those requests over to gabulosiscaserequests@gmail.com. I hope you all have an amazing rest of your day, wherever you are. Stay safe, like always, and I will hopefully see you in the next one.